Hey guys, it's RodimusPrimal. I'm back with another video, and today I'm going to give you guys my honest thoughts about part 2 of Masters of the Universe Revelation Season 1. And the reason why they did that is because they split the entire season into 2 parts, so you only got 5 episodes at first. And they made the second part, just got released now, November 23rd. And I took the time to watch it. So now I'm going to give you guys my honest review. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to give you guys a non-spoiler review at first. And then I'll eventually dive into the spoilers. Because there were things that I absolutely loved about this show. And things I absolutely hated about this show. And you're going to hear all about it. So without further ado, let's sit back, relax. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. And let's transform and roll out. Okay, so the thing is that if you guys have saw my initial review for Masters of the Universe Revelation Part 1, I gave you guys that into 2 parts and with the reviews. And the reason why is because there was a lot to talk about with Part 1, but the thing is that I still stand by my review, is that there were things that I absolutely disliked about the show, but I was really curious to see where they were going to take it, whether they were going to stick the landing, whether they're going to make that Part 2 worth all of the crap that we had to deal with in Part 1. And to be quite honest with you, I think that they did a pretty decent job of that in giving us a lot of action, a lot of excitement, a lot of things that eventually trying to bring things back to a new status quo for He-Man to a degree, because they've changed a lot of stuff around, and some He-Man fans are going to be upset about some of the changes, especially considering that if you're going by the Filmation cartoon, things don't work that way. The characters don't act that way. They don't behave as they should. I still think that Teela doesn't quite act like I would imagine Teela to act like, especially considering that I'm a big fan of the original Filmation cartoon. Yes, she had her moments, and I know some people disagree with that, but she had her moments, but she was different. In Revelation, she was much more, I want to say, snotty in a way, and just kind of so much self-absorbed, and she had to go through a lot of growth through Part 2 that I think that she did. I definitely think that she did as this series continued. She eventually did come through some growth, but she still had those moments of oh man, if you were a little bit more like Filmation Teela, I would be a little bit more happy. The action sequences, animated beautifully. If you want to see a Dragon Ball Z style fight between two Eternian heroes and villain, Eternian hero and villain in the battleground of the Kingdom of Eternos, you're gonna get that. If you want to see a big, giant, supersized, Eternia-wide battle outside of Castle Grayskull, you're going to get that. If you want to see any of those type of action sequences, yeah, this show does deliver in that respect. The thing is that in order to get there, in order to get to that final battle, there are things that just happen, and I sit there and I scratch my head and I say, I really liked a lot of this, but there were so many bad jokes, really bad jokes in the show that some people are going to like the potty humor. There's a lot of potty humor in the show. There's also a little bit of gore in a sense, there's blood, there's some slicing and dicing, which of course makes some adult fans happy. And of course there's a lot of nods to different aspects of the Masters of the Universe franchise, which is not a bad thing at all. But there's a lot of stuff that I really feel that they pulled from other franchises. In particular, there's a certain thing that happens in the final episode that makes you literally feel, I think it was the final episode, or it was right before, that makes you feel like you're watching Lord of the Rings. You'll understand exactly what I'm talking about when that happens. There is a Lord of the Rings moment that, if you, the best description that I can give you is "this shall not pass" happened in Part 1. There's also something that happens that really was cringe-inducing. Right around episode 3, episode 4, somewhere around there, something happens with the villains. And I literally sat in my chair going, I don't want to see this. I don't want to see this. No, why am I seeing this? This is horrible. Don't let your kids watch this. Do not let your kids watch this. In fact, I remember, when part 1 came out, I sat down and I watched part 1, just the first episode with my family. And my wife's reaction, we looked at each other and said, we're not letting the kids watch the rest of this. And part 2 dives deeper into a part where you cannot let your kids watch. If you have small kids, like I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, don't let your kids watch this new show. There's another He-Man show on Netflix, which I thoroughly enjoyed, but at the same time felt it was very removed from He-Man. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. But you'll understand if I decide to do a review on that show, I can give you guys my honest thoughts about it. But at the end of the day, I'm like, yeah, this show is aged up too much for a property that is supposed to be for, is started off as a kid's property and now is started, as they're trying to age it up literally to single men. And single people. Like it doesn't work for families that want to sit down and try to enjoy He-Man with their kids. That's where you have the original series and you have the new show on Netflix, not this one. But with that, at the end of the day, I still enjoyed the overall story arc together. Just there were parts that I absolutely hated. Do I recommend watching it? If you liked part 1, you're gonna like part 2. You're gonna think part 2 is awesome. If you have a problem with certain things that you don't want to let your kids see, yeah, obviously this is only for adults to allow them to watch. There's just a little bit too much, but yeah, it was okay. It was decent. Yeah, that's the best way that I can describe it. It's not horrible. It's not great. So I'm just gonna give it to you that way. With that, now let's talk about the spoilers, because first and foremost, yes, Adam does survive. He's not dead. He's bleeding. He's hurt. He's injured. The sorceress gains her power back, and when she does, she goes to cast a spell to try and stop Skelegod, because Skelegod is ready to literally kill our heroes who are literally stuck as they are. And sorceress gains her power back and sends Teela, Adam, and Andra and Cringer, to, back to the palace. But Man-at-Arms doesn't get away. But before, after that happens, the sorceress gets killed. And we kind of saw that coming, that they were probably going to end up killing her off, because they're trying to bring us to the story in which Teela is going to become the next sorceress. And they spend the next couple of episodes kind of showing that. Teela uses her magic powers to heal Adam. How she tries to deal with the fact that she always knew that the sorceress was her mother. Well, they also changed something here, and this is something that I don't know how I feel about this. They made it now that Duncan is officially Teela's biological father. They kind of pretty much allude to that. That Teela Na and Duncan were an item, and when she decided to become the next sorceress, she gave up Teela to Duncan to raise. So she never really was an adoptive daughter. She always was his daughter to begin with, at least as far as I can tell from the way that they presented it in the show. Skelegod is terrifying. He's absolutely incredibly powerful. He starts turning some of the people of Eternos into monsters. You see Fisto and Clamchamp. They actually get some action. They even save Adam and Teela and everybody, but they end up getting turned into monsters as well, and they had to blow them up. And Fisto gives off these horrible fisting jokes. Really horrible fisting jokes. Like, it's as if it was written by somebody who really thought that this potty humor really worked for a kid's property. And in some ways I went, maybe not. But some of it was kind of really, again, I know that they were aiming for an older audience, and that's understandable. But again, if you're going to let your kids watch this, you're going to have to tell them, no, you can't hear these jokes kind of thing. And Skeletor end up having to blow the two of them up after they get turned into monsters. And then Skelegod has their spirits in his hand. He's like, see, I'm not going to let them reach their eternal reward. Watch. And he crushes their spirits. So Adam then calls on the power of Grayskull without the sword. And in doing so, turns into savage He-Man. And the Savage He-Man is literally a monstrosity, where they literally turn He-Man into the Hulk. Did I like it? It was awesome, the fight between them. It was a Dragon Ball Z style fight. That's what I was talking about in the non-spoiler part, is that it was literally a Dragon Ball Z fight. But the thing is that because the people of Eternos, a lot of them had evacuated already, there was nobody there. So they were fighting through an abandoned city, and they were fighting each other, and as they were battling, it was awesome. The actual fight itself is amazing, and the animation was superb during that. But they realized that if they keep allowing Savage He-Man to go berserk like he is, that the entire city was going to be destroyed. So Teela uses her, already learns the spell, like easily figures it out, and is able to get them away. And they end up going into the Mystic Mountains, into the forest, and, Savage He-Man goes off on a murder spree, goes off and kills a Manticore, and then, is almost ready to kill Teela, and it was a very Betty Hulk moment. It was almost as if they were let's throw in Hulk into this whole transformation thing. And I'm like, but that's not He-Man. That kind of, I was okay with it, to a degree. And him being Savage He-Man, I mean, at least you had him, trying to control his powers. And they eventually find the encampment where King Randor and Marlena are. Now, this is where the show starts to get, in my opinion, around this moment, Teela crying a lot, and then Adam, Savage He-Man eventually gets transformed back into Adam after, Randor apologizes to Adam. And then, of course, there's the crying bit with Marlena, and it was a divorce. They're going to divorce the parents. No, they almost divorced the parents. And I understand that's kind of how you deal with grief, but that whole moment was just, it literally felt it was very stretched out. A lot of that storytelling could have been told in a shorter time frame, but they stretched out that storytelling. And at the same time, Skelegod is abusing, Evil Lyn as they control, Castle Grayskull. And she is now the new sorceress, has this whole pig outfit. It was a pig outfit. It was a bat outfit. And, they literally got into the point where they almost had, a very explicit scene. Let's just put it to you that way. And she has him power down in order to actually hop on his lap, and they start making out, and it's disgusting. I did not want to see that. I honestly did not want to see that. It kind of grossed me out, literally grossed me out. And then she ends up getting the power sword in the middle of it, and goes, okay, well, now you've abused me, now I'm going to have the power. And she turns herself into this raging, roiding looking freak, and she looks disgusting. She looks disgusting. And in a way, and towards the end, she basically becomes a nihilist, almost like Kefka from Final Fantasy VI. I made correlation between Kefka in Final Fantasy VI and Part 1. I really see Evil Lyn kind of becoming the Kefka in this, because she gained all the power, and she's a nihilist, and she wants to destroy everything, right? Kefka wanted to destroy everything. And so Skeletor and actually teams up with Adam in order to try and fight this new Evil Lyn. And then, of course, it's the big battle at the end. All of the other masters, they all start showing up. There's Ram Man and Buzz-Off and all these armies. They all start coming in to fight against Evil Lyn. Now, Evil Lyn destroys heaven, or Pre-Eternia, right? Kills everyone there. Which, when I thought about it, I was like, that's kind of horrible to really think that she just basically has the power to literally wipe out heaven. So she then raises hell on Earth, or not on Earth, but on Eternia, for this big, giant, supersized battle. And I'm watching it, I'm going, okay, the battle itself is awesome. I will say that. The battle itself is awesome. But as I'm watching it, I'm going, really? I kind of had a really big issue with her destroying, Pre-Eternia. It could have been something where she just didn't have that quite, ability. But then again, she wanted to show she was all powerful. And I almost felt like that was a little off, because if she had the power to destroy that, but she couldn't destroy the entire, all of King Randor's army, that kind of makes you scratch your head and you go, she has all that power, but she couldn't stop them, Really? Okay, all right, whatever, I guess just go with it. But then, Orko arrives because if everybody is from Subternia is revived, he then gets revived as well in a Gandalf the White moment, right? And then he has the power to, he uses his power to get the sword back to Adam, who turns into He-Man, who also turns, Cringer into Battle Cat, but then turns Skeletor back into Skelegod, so they can all fight against Evil Lyn. At the same time, Teela gets the power of, becomes the sorceress. And during that whole moment, she again has a very resentful moment with her mother. And during that whole moment, I'm like, there's more to it than this. There should be better storytelling than this. And I didn't like the fact that she could now leave the castle. I don't like the idea behind there's a lot of power, that there's a lot of allowed restriction. And I don't like the idea behind, power that's uncontrolled or untapped. And I guess that's kind of like the idea behind Adam is able to become Savage He-Man, but then Teela can leave the castle at will. It needs to be a little bit more balanced there, and I thought that was a little off. Scareglow is obviously revived, so Orko the White is now, I'm going to call him Orko the White. Like, that's just going to be basically the name for him, right? Orko the White ends up, defeating, Scareglow, and they're fighting him. Oh, speaking of which, there were a lot of Masters of the Universe 1987 movie references. They brought in Slash. They brought in a couple of different images and things like that you can think of and go, that's from that movie, right? Like they actually brought those things in here. And I thought that was pretty neat that they had Slash come in, and they had a couple of other different villains. They really got the bottom of the barrel. They got Goatman. They actually said it in the show, right? Goatman and Pig Boy, right? Which I think are Masters of the Universe Classics toys. So really, this is not a sequel to... The Masters of the Universe Revelation is not a sequel to the Filmation cartoon. No, it is a sequel to the Masters of the Universe Classics toy line. That's going to be my, idea of where this show actually is a sequel to. Now, is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? And does it take elements from the Filmation cartoon? Of course it does. Now, the final battles between Teela and, I want to call her, I guess you want to say, Kefka Lyn, and Skelegod versus He-Man are incredible. Incredible fight sequences. That the last two episodes were worth the time to watch. The actual action that happened in them was amazing. Even the way that they finished off their opponents was not that bad either. I actually like the fact that He-Man tossed Skelegod literally like a Galvatron moment, like versus Rodimus Prime, or you may want to say Team Rocket blasts off in the speed of light, into the sunset kind of thing. And then Evil Lyn decides that she's just going to go off and do her own thing. I didn't even talk about Andra. She felt like a second fiddle for a lot of the show, but she was given a lot of storytelling. I wish Clamp Champ wasn't killed, because I really would have wished that he had a little bit more storytelling. But Andra at least got, a lot of... she got promoted to lieutenant out of nowhere. And then at the end of the show, she becomes the new Man-at-Arms, because Duncan is basically retired. And Teela is now the sorceress, and as the sorceress, she can leave Castle Grayskull. Everyone now knows that Adam is He-Man, but he's still Prince of Eternia. And they even allude to Adam and Teela having a love relationship, and I thought that was really well done. I liked that section of the ending. The problem that I had towards the end, though, Skeletor should have just taken over Snake Mountain again, but instead they wanted to leave things on a cliffhanger. They wanted to leave us prepared for season 2, right? So the whole motherboard thing turns out to be something from the Horde, and the Horde gets onto Skeletor, starts turning him into a whatever those techno-organic things were in part 1. And then, of course, the actual robot that actually has Skeletor shows the Horde symbol. And when I saw that, I was like, that's horrible. That's horrible. Do I want to see season 2 with the Horde as a techno-organic kind of thing? Not really. Not really. I felt that it was an ending to Masters of the Universe, in my opinion. I really felt it was just like, this is the end. This is the end of the classic era of He-Man as we know it, and we don't even know if they can even bring She-Ra in, because it's all caught caught up in the rights. DreamWorks had their She-Ra cartoon, and now you have, can you actually bring classic She-Ra into this? What do we want to? What do they actually call it? Do they call it Masterverse? I think that's what they call it. Yeah, Masterverse She-Ra. Do you actually think we'll see a classic version of that character? Probably not. They'll probably change every aspect of that character. It also doesn't make sense because her sword of protection is supposed to be linked to the sword of power. Like where there was no connection there that actually makes sense. And I don't know how they would be able to even write it to make sense. So in a way, I feel like this is the end, right? And it doesn't make me eager to see part 2. Did I like it? Again, the final battle was amazing. The action sequences were amazing. The animation was fantastic. The music was great. There was just a lot of things that made me feel cringeworthy. That whole Skeletor Evil Lyn makeout session was cringeworthy. A lot of the weird, stupid one-liners that they used were really corny. Some of it was well done. I liked Duncan, his personality, him trying to, try to convince Skeletor that and Evil Lyn not to be evil kind of thing. There was a lot of that. I did not like Evil Lyn's backstory. I did not like that. The whole, I ran away from home because my parents were cannibals. What? What? I literally had to scratch my head at that one. It was like a backstory that I didn't need. For that character. Yes, she could have had a tragic backstory. Maybe her parents were killed, but her parents were cannibals. And then He-Man himself, speaking of which, when he becomes Savage He-Man and he ends up getting a battle axe, he kills off a bunch of Skeletor's monsters, slicing them up into a million pieces, but they are turned, civilians. And there's no way to turn them back. There was no redemption out of that. You literally took the good out of He-Man away. You kind of, in a way, take a lot of his, what makes him tick, that he's a hero, away from him, because you turned him into a monster. And, finally when he becomes a hero, He-Man at the end, I was very excited about that. But again, I have mixed feelings about this show. There was things that I absolutely hated. And the Savage He-Man, him killing civilians and, them destroying, Fisto and Clamp Champ. And then the whole makeout session that it was horrible. A lot of cool references, a lot of throwbacks. But in the end of the day, to me, I feel like this is the end of He-Man. No more. I'm in a way, I'm done with He-Man. I don't look forward to a season 2. I really don't. Shouldn't I be excited for a season 2? This was awesome, but I don't want to see more. Doesn't that make sense? I hated the fact that you did this, but this was awesome. You know what I'm saying? I'm torn. I want to love it. I want to hate it. That's literally how I feel about the show. I want to love it and I want to hate it. In the same coin. And it's hard to put my stamp of where I stand on the show, but that's literally how I felt at the end of the show when it was all said and done. I hated certain aspects. I hated certain characters. Hated the fact that they killed certain characters. I hated some of the adult jokes and some of the adult gore that should be for a show that's supposed to be for He-Man fans of all ages versus some of the action sequences were just amazing. So the animation was great. The music was great. And it's I'm torn. But I don't know what you guys think. I mean, where should I stand? Where should I, where should I put where should I lay my hat for this show? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Or are you right there in between like I am? Are you torn? How do you stand? Of course, leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Be sure to thumbs up this video and subscribe. Check out my other videos as well. I have more videos coming down the pipeline for this channel, including Godzilla reviews. I'm probably going to review Ghostbusters Afterlife as soon as I can get a date night with my wife. And of course, I also want to talk about, but not watch or review, Cowboy Bebop, the live action adaptation, because the anime is well worth it. So you can stay tuned for videos on all of that. And as always, guys, until next time, till all are one.